It's about a lonely, weak boy who unlocks incredible abilities after merging with a secret alien weapon, but that makes him a target to everyone who wants to steal it. The story kicks off as Hikaru spots a powerful beam of light shooting out from a building. Alarms blare inside, and the guards are freaking out after realizing something seriously important has been stolen. The thief is named Aki, and she makes an acrobatic escape, but the guards catch up to her on the roof. But Aki's no ordinary thief. She's a Mecha Yude host. So she whips out her weapon and starts taking them down, but they're packing anti-Mecha Yude gear. Despite her best efforts, she's captured and another host steps in, ready to reclaim the stolen cube. Aki's Mecha Yude isn't staying quiet. It speaks up, insulted by how poorly its kind is treated. The blue-haired guy couldn't care less, seeing Mecha Yude as nothing more than tools for humans. He retrieves the cube and taunts Aki, but she's not done yet. With some tricks up her sleeve, she breaks free and an epic battle ensues. The guy demands she be captured, but Aki is too quick and agile. In the chaos, she knocks the cube loose, breaking its container. Then a massive surge of power erupts from it, the same light Hikaru saw earlier. As the energy flares, Hikaru feels something strange, like a voice calling out for help. The next day, Hikaru heads to school, still shaken by what he saw. On the train, he suddenly has a panic attack and tries to rush back home, but his friends show up, unknowingly stopping him. Nearby, Eki is getting scolded for all the chaos she caused. She's told the cube is still somewhere nearby, and she promises not to mess up again. Later, we see Hikaru telling his friends about the strange voice he heard and the bright light from the night before. He explains that after getting a closer look, the building exploded. He even recorded it on his phone, but for some reason, the video shows nothing. Hikaru also mentions seeing something bright fall nearby, but that's not in the footage either. His friends don't believe a word of it, dismissing his story as some weird dream. They mock him for believing in ghosts. But then, out of nowhere, Hikaru hears the voice again, and he's left in shock. Hikaru charges toward the mysterious voice, only to be stopped by some badass cop who warns him he's nearing a restricted area. The cop tells him to go home, but then just leaves him there like it's no big deal. Ignoring the warning, Hikaru hears the voice again, crying out for help. Something inside him snaps, and he dashes into the restricted zone, desperately searching for the source. His frantic search leads him to a glowing cube, the voice coming from within it, asking for help again. Hikaru is now shocked but curious, so he ends up touching the cube anyway. The cube suddenly shoots straight up into the sky, and now Hikaru is in a state of extreme panic when he sees it come back down. But before it touches him, it unleashes a massive burst of power. The light is blinding, so intense that even Aki, wherever she is, notices it. Hikaru, however, has bigger problems. A giant arm suddenly sprouts out of his back, and the arm is celebrating its freedom. Even weirder, Hikaru can't feel the arm at all. Then, while he's still trying to figure out where the voice is coming from, the arm casually reveals itself. It thanks Hikaru for saving it and asks for his name, but Hikaru, understandably losing his mind, has no idea what's going on, but the arm tries to be polite and introduces itself first, only to realize it's forgotten its own name. Hikaru, in full panic mode, tries to shake it off, but the arm is stuck to his hoodie like some clingy pet. Then, before Hikaru can even process this madness, a drone shows up and declares that its target has been found. Hikaru, thinking it's just some delivery drone, ignores it in his attempt to ditch the arm. But surprisingly, this is not an Amazon package, it's a weapon of mass destruction. And now Hikaru has to run for his life. As he runs, Hikaru yells at the arm to leave him the hell alone and go hang out with its drone buddy. But the arm insists that Hikaru is his only friend now. In the chaos, Hikaru trips, and the arm accidentally yanks his pants off. Pantsless and panicking, Hikaru still manages to use the arm to fend off the drone and stop it from slicing him in half. The arm points out with perfect timing that now is really not the time for laughing. Then, to make matters worse, several more Terminator-style drones appear. So the arm, trying to keep Hikaru calm, tells him not to worry because they just need to work together to escape. Elsewhere, a group gets word that the trigger arm has been located. One guy's pumped to have it back, but the rest of them are losing their minds, furious that it's made contact with some random human. They're not sure who the kid is, but they figure he's just some civilian. The president of the group leaves the whole mess to the angry white rooster Magai, who immediately orders a perimeter around the area, and his top priority is to capture the trigger arm, and he doesn't give a damn what happens to the kid. Meanwhile, Hikaru manages to hide for a moment, and the arm compliments him on being a pretty fast runner. Hikaru, still freaked out, demands to know what the arm even is, but it has no clue, not even its own name. The only thing it's sure of is that Hikaru is a stand-up guy. The arm goes on to explain that without something called arbitrium, it can't move freely. So Hikaru is confused, wondering what this arbitrium thing is, but the arm's all over the place and just asks for Hikaru's name. Hikaru, still not interested in chit-chat, walks off, pointing out that the arm seems to work just fine for escaping on its own. The arm concernedly warns that they might still be in danger, worried about Hikaru's safety, But Hikaru's not having it. He blames the arm for all the trouble and says he'd be safer if he got far away from it. The further Hikaru gets, though, the more the arm starts to weaken, practically begging him not to leave it behind. Hikaru hesitates and rushes back to help, but the arm recovers just as quickly, so Hikaru tries to leave again. This back and forth goes on a few times, and it becomes painfully obvious that Hikaru has to stick close or the arm will lose its energy completely. Realizing he's got no other choice, Hikaru reluctantly throws his hoodie back on with the arm still attached. Just then, the drones show up again, but this time, Hikaru snaps and demands that the arm do something useful. The arm doesn't hesitate, it grabs Hikaru and drags him off. Meanwhile, the blue-haired guy up top figures the drones are enough to handle this civilian, as he has to focus on Aki, who's lurking nearby. Aki is down below, but surprisingly she's so terrible with directions, so the voice in her ear is trying to guide her, telling her to go the other way, but instead of taking the long way around, Aki's arms contemplate smashing through the building, but she decides to squeeze through an opening instead. Meanwhile, Hikaru is still running for his life, but Aki eventually tracks him down, and she unleashes her arms to take the drones down with ease. Aki calls Hikaru's arm Alma and threatens it, warning that if it moves, she'll end it right there. Aki's arms remind her she's supposed to read some script to put her targets at ease, but they're rudely interrupted by the blue-haired guy, who's itching for revenge after last night's events. He ends up bickering with Aki's arms of all things. Alma then points out a way for Hikaru to escape, and since Aki can't chase them with her arms out, Hikaru takes the chance. The drones of course keep coming after him, and Aki's anger skyrockets. Hikaru is already regretting the hell out of ever stepping foot in this restricted area, and the terror is written all over his face. Alma, seeing the mess he's dragged Hikaru into, tells him to just leave him behind. Everyone's gunning for them, and Alma doesn't want Hikaru caught up in it any longer. Hikaru hesitates because if he leaves, Alma will lose all his strength, and this moment shows just how kind-hearted Hikaru really is. Alma's resolve strengthens, and he reminds that he never wants to see good people get hurt, so he tells Hikaru to forget everything and run as fast as he can. Just then, Aki obliterates the blue-haired guy, and she's had it with Alma's constant running. Alma cornered surrenders and agrees to do whatever Aki says as long as she lets Hikaru go. But Hikaru's no longer the same scared kid, so he's done with being a coward, and also would leave a sour taste in his mouth if he ran away now. Aki, clearly fed up, decides she'll have to destroy both of them, but Alma does something unexpected. He tells Hikaru to step forward, but Hikaru hesitates confused, so Alma insists this is the only way out. Hikaru takes a deep breath, trusts the arm he just met, and charges forward. And in that moment, Alma undergoes a wild transformation, giving Hikaru the power to land a punch on Aki so hard that all she can do is reach out helplessly as they make their escape. They crawl out of a sewer not long after, and Hikaru finally introduces himself properly this time. Back at the building, some kid collapses in fury, demanding to know who stole his mecha Yude. He's seething, declaring that the trigger arm is his. Meanwhile, Aki's boss is disappointed to hear she let the arm slip away, but he gets it because no one could have predicted a civilian would manage to control Alma. Time's ticking though, and their enemies will be hot on their trail, so he orders Aki back out to retrieve the arm. Later on, Hikaru heads to school, trying to act normal while hiding the fact that he's got a giant talking arm attached to him. He then thinks he's in the clear, until he walks into class and his heart sinks when he spots Aki, now the newest student in school. Ignoring everyone, the furious Aki drags her seat right next to Hikaru's seat and introduces herself with a cold, angry glare, and that shit leaves our poor boy completely speechless. Then, as Hikaru tries to shrug off Aki's intense death glare, he has no idea that someone else is also keeping an eye on him. Two agents, Warner and Toos, are watching him from a nearby building. They work for the Kagami Group and have been assigned to recover the trigger arm by any means necessary, including murder, although Toos isn't thrilled about the idea of killing a kid. Later after class, Hikaru sneaks into the bathroom, hoping to escape Aki. You never imagined she'd actually follow him to school, but today it doesn't seem like she's looking for a fight. Hikaru figures she's trying to avoid making a scene on school grounds. Regardless, Alma thinks this is their chance to talk things out. Yesterday's chaos left them no choice but to fight Aki, but thinking back, she did seem somewhat friendly at first, though Hikaru remembers it a bit differently, and his missing favorite pants a proof of that shit day. Still, there aren't many people he can talk to about Alma. His options are limited: go with Aki or head to the police. Hikaru asks Alma what he thinks, but Alma is too busy having fun messing with the toilet paper to really care. However, Aki, who had been eavesdropping from the next stall, cuts in. She tells Hikaru that going to the police is a terrible idea. They'd hand him straight over to Kagami. She then climbs over the stall and tells Hikaru she's here to be his bodyguard. But Hikaru, flustered by how close she is in the boys' restroom, panics and bolts out the door, with Aki chasing after him. Later, after losing Aki, Hikaru is having lunch with his friends. But given how Aki has been relentlessly chasing him lately, his friends are starting to think he might be in a relationship with her or something. Hikaru denies it, but his weak protests aren't exactly convincing, especially when Aki shows up on the roof looking for him yet again. Hikaru's friends call Aki over, pointing out that he's right there, but in that very moment, Hikaru seems to have disappeared. Somehow he managed to slip away and hide in the blink of an eye. Alma, confused by Hikaru's behavior, wonders why he's dodging Aki when they'd already agreed to try talking to her. But just then, one of Hikaru's classmates shows up on the roof, clearly having searched for Aki all over. She introduces herself as Meru, all smiles, and says it's nice to finally meet Aki. But Aki's reaction is not exactly warm and fuzzy. Meru, being as cheerful as ever, mistakes Aki's cold expression for nerves. After all, she's the new kid. So by trying to make things less awkward, she offers Aki a tray of cookies as a welcome gift. Hikaru braces himself, half expecting Aki to blow up, but to his shock, Aki seems completely mesmerized by the cookies, and without a second thought, she grabs a fistful and shoves them into her mouth. Meru, a little taken aback by how fast Aki inhaled the cookies, is happy her gift was appreciated. She then asks if they can be friends, and Aki, still chewing, casually says she doesn't mind. Watching this unfold, Hikaru is stunned because Aki seems way more normal than he had initially though, but that doesn't mean he's about to strike up a conversation with her. So he slips on his noise-canceling headphones and decides to nap his way through the rest of the day, hoping to avoid her. Meanwhile, as Aki continues devouring the cookies, Meru starts asking about her relationship with Hikaru. That's when Aki suddenly remembers she was supposed to be looking for him this whole time. Wanting to be helpful, Meru comes up with a plan to get Aki alone with Hikaru. Later that day, while Hikaru is trying to make a quiet exit from school, Meru appears out of nowhere and hands him a handwritten letter from Aki. Hikaru already knows where this is headed, and as he predicted, Aki wants to meet him. Meru, fully convinced she's playing matchmaker, drags Hikaru to an abandoned part of the school, refusing to let him leave because she's certain Aki is about to confess her love. Frustrated and out of options, Hikaru steps into the classroom where Aki is waiting and immediately starts yelling at her for getting Meru involved in this whole mess. Aki, completely unbothered, denies everything, explaining that this was all Meru's idea. Still, Hikaru points out that she's been following him around all day and demands to know what her deal is. Finally, Aki cuts to the chase, revealing that she's part of an organization called ARMS, and her mission is to watch over Alma as his bodyguard. Alma thinks this is fantastic news. After all, Aki protecting them sounds like a win. But Aki quickly clarifies, saying her job is to protect Alma, not Hikaru. She isn't too concerned with what happens to Hikaru, but since Alma is linked to him, there's not much she can do to separate them. As part of her mission, she's supposed to bring both of them back to headquarters. She assures Hikaru that nothing will happen to him as long as he cooperates, and while Alma sees this as great news, Hikaru remains skeptical, because he's still not sure if Aki can be trusted. Alma understands Hikaru's hesitation, but insists that Aki knows something important about him, something they need to find out. Alma is still curious about who he is, and Hikaru feels bad for him, so Hikaru reluctantly agrees to go with Aki, even though he doesn't fully trust her. But before committing though, Hikaru demands to know why Alma loses power whenever he moves too far away from him. After witnessing this firsthand, Aki's mind short-circuits for a moment. In her experience, a mecha you'd fusing to something as simple as a jacket shouldn't be possible, and there's no intel on anything like this. She then steps closer to Hikaru, telling him she needs to take him in for testing, but her sudden aggression freaks him out. So Hikaru panickedly asks Alma if there's any way they can get out of this. Alma tries to use the same power they'd unleashed on Aki the day before. There's a massive flash of light, but nothing happens because Alma's still too weak, so that leaves Hikaru with only one option. He grabs Alma and bolts. Running as fast as he can, Hikaru heads for the front door. But just as he's about to escape, Meru steps in his way, blocking the exit, and she tells him he should finish talking to Aki before she lets him leave. Meanwhile, outside the building, Tus and Wanner are keeping a close watch on the entrance. But since there's a schoolgirl standing outside, they can't make a move without blowing their cover. Inside, Hikaru frantically searches for another way out, but all the other exits have been boarded up, so with no options left, it looks like his only choice is to head up. Meanwhile, Aki is desperately trying to track him down. Dex, her right arm, chimes in, saying she should head down the right hall, while Sinus, her left arm, argues she should go left. But surprisingly, Aki ignores both of them and goes rogue, literally. She smashes through the floor, crashing directly on top of Hikaru. Now there's no escape for Hikaru, but Aki can't wrap her head around why Hikaru's running when he literally spared her life just yesterday. Hikaru then tries to explain by saying that he could never kill anyone, but Aki's not hearing it anymore. She's convinced he's up to something shady, using Alma as part of his scheme. Alma tries to defend him, claiming Hikaru's not the bad guy here, But Aki's too far gone in her suspicions, so Alma tries to use his powers to protect Hikaru, but when Alma's powers fail to activate again, Aki takes it as undeniable proof. Hikaru isn't bonded with Alma, so her mind's made up that Hikaru's gotta go. She's ready to end it all to protect Alma. But of course, this is when Meru bursts in, drawn by all the noise. And wouldn't you know it, she catches a glimpse of the scene and immediately jumps to the wrong conclusion. Thinking she's interrupting a private moment, so she awkwardly turns around and leaves without a word. And as soon as she's gone, Aki moves in to finish the job. But Hikaru's already vanished, forcing her to start the hunt all over again. Once Aki's out of sight, Hikaru quietly gets to his feet and tries to slip out through the front door. But he's stopped by Wanner, who's now wearing one of those Kagami Group uniforms, instantly putting Hikaru on high alert. Wanner casually says he needs Hikaru's help, but seriously, after the Kagami Group nearly killed him with drones, Hikaru's in no mood to offer any favors. Wanner then offers a half-hearted apology, claiming the drones were a mistake, but he's really only sorry they didn't finish the job. And without warning, he blasts Hikaru with the sonic cannon. It doesn't physically harm him, but Hikaru drops to his knees, overwhelmed by dizziness. Wanner then kicks the door open to give Tus a clear shot, but like an idiot, he's blocking her view. But by the time he steps aside, Alma has already dragged Hikaru out of range. Even though Hikaru is still reeling, the danger's far from over, so he scrambles back inside, desperate to escape the nightmare. Tus is pissed at Wanner for screwing up her shot, so she decides to stop wasting time and starts blasting through the walls, hoping to nail Hikaru. Hikaru is freaking out, sure that she's going to kill him, but Alma has something else on his mind. Even though Wanner is using a mecha Yude, Alma can't sense any consciousness from it, which is seriously weird. Right then, Wanner hits Hikaru with another sonic wave, and Hikaru crashes at the end of the hallway, but just as Tus takes her shot, Aki swoops in, saving his life at the last second. Not backing down, Wanner fires off another sonic wave, so Aki tries to block it, but just like Hikaru, she gets dizzy and drops to the ground. Wanner is loving every minute of this because he lives for making people suffer. But Aki not going down that easy, so she pushes herself back up, determined to protect Alma, and she begs Hikaru to run while he still can. Hikaru hesitates, not wanting to leave Aki to fight alone, but she begs him to go because they can't let the Kagami Group get their hands on Alma. Hikaru finally listens, dashing away while Aki keeps Wanner busy. But of course, Wanner's not done. He pulls out a new weapon, and Aki has no idea how to handle it. Meanwhile, as Hikaru races up the stairs, he grows increasingly frustrated with everyone coming after him. Then Alma stops him and says they shouldn't leave Aki behind after all. But Hikaru reminds him that Aki told him to run to protect Alma, but Alma's not feeling it. He doesn't want to abandon her, so he leaps off Hikaru's back and punches a hole through the wall for Hikaru to escape. But when Alma tries to go back to help Aki himself, he quickly loses power because he can't move too far from Hikaru. Realizing Alma can't do anything without him, Hikaru agrees to return and help, but they need a solid plan before facing Wanner and his deadly sonic cannon. Meanwhile, Wanner manages to defeat Aki by using shackles that suppress the consciousness of Mecha Yude, rendering her helpless. He then drags her to the rooftop where Tus is supposed to snipe her. But to Wanner's surprise, Tus shows up in person, frustrated with how long he's taking to finish the job. She then takes one look at Aki and mocks her for being so pathetic, barely able to contain her disdain. Sure, Tus would love to kill her, but she has orders to bring Aki back alive. She then tells Wanner to get back inside and find Hikaru, but that won't take long because Hikaru's already coming up the staircase right toward them. Then as soon as Hikaru spots Wanner, he throws a punch, but let's be real, he's no fighter and Wanner easily dodges it. Hikaru may not have fists of fury, but at least he knows Wanner's attacks won't work on him. Wanner decides to blast him anyway, but Hikaru's got noise-canceling earpieces in, making him immune to the sonic wave. His goal was just to buy enough time for Aki to get back in the game, but when he glances at her, he realizes she's been captured, and that throws a wrench in his plan, so by thinking fast, Hikaru comes up with a new one. He then throws Alma at Aki, hoping to get those shackles off her Mecha Yude. But of course, Alma starts losing power the second he's too far from Hikaru. So now Hikaru has to sprint closer, and somehow Tus, who's supposed to be a sniper, completely misses her shot. Alma and Hikaru manage to free Aki, and the moment she's back on her feet, she grabs Tus, using her as a human shield to charge straight at Wanner. Wanner hesitates because he doesn't want to blast Tus, but she orders him to fire for the sake of the mission. He follows through, but all he manages to do is knock Tus out cold, so Aki wastes no time and delivers a knockout blow to Wanner as well. The building is on the verge of collapse after all the damage their fight caused, and just before it crumbles, Tus regains consciousness and flies away, leaving Wanner to get buried in the rubble along with the others. Then we see that Aki and Hikaru make it out in one piece, but before they can catch their breath, Aki's boss from ARMS shows up, and he is not happy with the mess she made to complete the mission. They then hauled Hikaru back to their headquarters, and when Hikaru finally wakes up, he's introduced to the leader of the arms group, Algiz, and his Mecha Yude Fist. Algiz explains that they're in a war against the Kagami group, whose goal is to enslave all Mecha Yude and control them. Alma doesn't remember much about them, but Fist reveals he's actually Alma's brother, and they need his help to win this war. Alma immediately agrees to help and convinces Hikaru to join as well, but Aki and Algiz cut in, telling Hikaru that they only need Alma for this fight, so technically he doesn't have to stick around at all. While he was asleep, they ran tests on him to measure the levels of Arbitrium in his body. Arbitrium is the energy produced by the human mind, and it's what fuels all Mecha Yude. But when Hikaru's levels were plotted on a graph, well, this is what his levels look like. And this is what a normal Mecha Yude user's levels look like. In case it wasn't already clear, Hikaru is a total failure when it comes to wielding Mecha Yude, and there's no sugarcoating it. Algiz then admits that Hikaru might have been the one to awaken Alma, but he's also the reason Alma is now fused to a jacket, and on top of that, he can't even use Alma's power. Despite this disaster, they have no choice but to leave Alma in Hikaru's care for now. However, Algiz makes it painfully clear Hikaru is not allowed to act on his own under any circumstances because he simply cannot handle himself. Alma then tries to defend Hikaru, pointing out that the only reason Kagami didn't capture him is thanks to Hikaru. But Quen cuts in, saying that even if that's true, the fact remains. Hikaru doesn't have the power to wield Alma properly, making him a liability. Just as things get tense, Aki interrupts, saying she believes Hikaru might have the potential to draw out Alma's power after all. He did harness it the first time they met, so with some training, she's sure he can improve. And what has this training been so far? Alma doing push-ups on the school roof? Sure, Hikaru's grateful Aki offered to train him, but he's seriously questioning how effective this is when Alma is doing all the work and he's just sitting there. But Aki tells him that training Arbitrium is all about spirit, so he just needs to psych himself up to make himself stronger. That's all well and good, but it still doesn't explain how exercise is supposed to boost his Arbitrium. Nonetheless, Hikaru decides to just roll with it for now. A few moments later, Eki gets a call from ARMS, telling her she has to return to headquarters immediately, so she cuts Hikaru and Alma's so-called training short and drags them back with her. Apparently, there's been a string of incidents where Mecha Yude have been ripped away from their wielders, and surprisingly, this guy is the third victim this week. Algiz is convinced this has Kagami's dirty fingerprints all over it, likely the work of a new agent. So his top priority now is to recover the stolen Mecha Yude as fast as humanly possible before things go from bad to worse. Alma, clueless as ever, asks what too late even means, so Dex breaks it down for him. If someone's Mecha Yude gets forcibly ripped from their body, they're dead in a few days, no question. They're not entirely sure why, but the best guess is that Arbitrium starts leaking out from the fusion point, draining the poor soul's strength until they just wither away. A lot about Arbitrium is still a mystery, but one thing's clear. It messes with the human body in ways they barely understand. For example, anyone who fuses with a Mecha Yude gets a ridiculous boost in physical ability. Not that it helps Hikaru, since Alma didn't fully fuse with him, he's still just a regular guy, no superpowers for him. Aki spots some marks on the victim's arms and instantly knows the culprit used a worm-type mecha. Algiz is already reading her mind, so before she can say anything, he shuts it down. Her job is to protect Alma, period, with no side missions and no personal vendettas. The second Algiz is out the door, Aki naturally ignores everything he just said and announces she has something she needs to investigate for personal reasons. And since she's stuck babysitting Hikaru, he's tagging along whether he likes it or not. Meanwhile, over at the Kagami group, they're panicking because Jun Kagami's younger brother has stolen an experimental artificial Mecha Yude and vanished into thin air. No one knows what his plan is, but it's definitely not good. The 3rd Division offers to handle it, but considering they're the same clowns who let Alma escape last time, the White Ravens are given the job instead. Elsewhere, Hikaru is out with Eki late into the night, and by now he's figured out she's snooping around investigating that case, even though Algiz told her not to. Still, he wonders if it's really a good idea for them to be out here alone. Aki flat out ignores him, but just then, they hear car horns blaring nearby. On the other side of the containers, they spot the White Ravens, busy searching for Kagami's younger brother. Their leader, Imada, orders his men to keep scouring the area. But of course, that's when Aki and Hikaru show up. Hikaru, as usual, thinks it's a terrible idea to get involved with anyone from the Kagami group, but Aki unfazedly assures him everything will be fine as long as he sticks close and keeps Alma hidden. She steps up to Imada and casually asks if he knows anything about a worm-type Mecha Yude wielder. At first, they think she's just some random girl, but the second she mentions Mecha Yude, their move flips. Imada and his squad go hostile. There's no way they can let the general public find out about the mechas. They charge in to capture her, and Aki's left with no choice but to fight back. She calls out Sinus and Dex for backup. Imada's taken aback when he realizes she's a mecha wielder, but orders are orders. He tells the White Ravens to regroup and attack again. Meanwhile, Hikaru gets knocked aside in the chaos, and as he's struggling to get back on his feet, he spots a young boy with an inhaler hiding in a corner. Hikaru tells the kid it's dangerous to be here and asks if he's okay, but the boy doesn't respond and instead he bolts. Hikaru has no idea who this kid is, but something doesn't sit right with him, so he takes off after the boy, leaving Aki to handle the White Raven solo. Imada, noticing this, has his Mecha Joe transform into a bike, and he speeds off to chase the kid too. At the same time, a few White Raven members catch up to the kid and Hikaru, so Hikaru steps in front of the kid, ready to protect him. The White Raven guys look more than happy to beat the crap out of Hikaru if it means getting to the kid, but right before Hikaru gets smacked, Alma pops out and blocks the hit. Just then, they spot Imada and his Mecha Yude bikes zooming straight toward them. Hikaru turns around and tells the kid to run, but the kid's already vanished. Imada's original target may have slipped away, but now that he's spotted Alma, he switches gears and goes after him instead. Alma quickly realizes they're in trouble, so he tries to drag Hikaru to safety. But let's be real, there's no way Alma can outrun a motorcycle. So Imada easily catches up and grabs Alma, smug as ever for capturing the trigger arm. Just when it looks like Imada's won, Aki comes out of nowhere, knocks him clean off his bike, and pins him down. She demands answers about a worm-type Mecha Yude wielder, and Imada and Joe, not wanting to get squashed by a shipping container, reluctantly agree to cooperate. But it turns out they genuinely don't know anything about a worm-type wielder, so Aki frustratedly drops the container and lets them go. She's not happy about the dead end, but she's even more pissed at Hikaru for running off like an idiot. Hikaru tries to explain he saw a kid being chased and just wanted to help, but Aki's having none of it. She tears into him, furious that his reckless behavior almost got Alma captured. As much as she wants to believe in him, he's still powerless, and she tells him point blank that he can't do anything on his own. Meanwhile, the kid from earlier is watching everything unfold from the rooftops, clearly interested in Alma too. He's just waiting for the right moment to make his move. Back on the ground, Hikaru is just as furious with Aki. After all, she's the one who dragged him into this mess in the first place, without bothering to explain a damn thing. So why should he trust her or blindly follow her orders? And he's had enough? And if anyone's to blame for this disaster, it's her. So he tells her he's done, and he's just going to go home. Stinus and Dex then ask Aki if it's really okay to let Hikaru just walk off on his own, but she's too mad to care. She snaps that she doesn't give a damn what happens to him. As Hikaru storms away, Alma tries to talk sense into him, suggesting he go back and apologize to Aki. After all, she's the one protecting them. But Hikaru flat out refuses. Then we see that Jun is lurking nearby and thinks this is perfect. If Hikaru's beefing with his bodyguard, it'll be way easier to snatch Alma. But before he can make his move, Aki cuts him off, and despite being furious with Hikaru, she's still got a duty to keep them safe no matter what. Jun was hoping to avoid her, but since he's out of options, he brings out his mecha. Aki's blood boils when she realizes it's a worm type. So she thinks Jun is the very guy she's been hunting down, but after their first clash, Dex quickly realizes he's not the one they're after. Still, that moment of hesitation is all Jun needs to surround Aki, and things are about to go south fast. Meanwhile, Hikaru is stewing over his argument with Aki when his phone rings. Alma urges him to apologize while he's got the chance, but when Hikaru checks the screen, he sees a picture of Aki knocked out cold. Jun's voice follows, telling Hikaru that he stripped Aki of her Mecha Yude, and without them, she'll be dead in a few hours. So if Hikaru wants to save her, he's got to meet Jun at a specific location. So the first thing the panicking Hikaru does is call Algis to report what happened. Algis is obviously worried about Aki, but he warns Hikaru not to go after Jun because that's exactly what Jun wants. He says he'll send some agents to track them down, but in the meantime he orders Hikaru and Alma to stay put and not do anything reckless. Hikaru is beyond fed up with being told he's too weak to handle anything, and he's starting to believe it might be true. Alma, however, assures him he's capable of amazing things when he sets his mind to it, but Hikaru isn't buying it, and he argues that every brave act he's done so far has only been because of Alma's influence, so without Alma he'd still be a coward. He then admits for the first time that he's truly powerless on his own, but right now he's not alone. So he asks Alma to lend him his strength for what he's about to do. Hikaru and Alma then head over to the abandoned warehouse Jun marked on the map, and as they walk in, Jun greets them with a smug smile. Alma, not wasting time, asks why Jun's doing all of this, so Jun, in typical fashion, explains that he's after the strongest Mecha Yude. Sure, Sinus and Dex are decent, but compared to what he wants, they're nothing but junk. What he really wants is the Trigger Arm, the legendary piece that's said to grant its wielder the strongest body, and Jun's determined to claim that power for himself. So without a second thought, Jun launches his attack, forcing Hikaru to dart around the room to avoid getting flattened. Then when he spots an opening, Hikaru closes in and tries to grab Sinus and Dex, but Jun's always one step ahead, blocking every move with ease. Jun laughs and mocks him, calling Hikaru nothing but a weakling. Hikaru doesn't argue because he knows he's weak, but that's not stopping him from doing what's right. With resolve burning his eyes, he charges back in, managing to outmaneuver Jun just enough to break through his defenses. Frustrated beyond belief, Jun can't believe how hard Hikaru's making him work. To make things worse, his asthma starts acting up and he's had enough. Deciding to put an end to this, he traps Hikaru inside a massive energy cage, leaving him nowhere to run. Then with no hesitation, Jun electrocutes him until Hikaru crashes to the ground, completely drained. Seizing the moment, Jun grabs Hikaru and begins ripping Alma away, pulling them apart piece by piece. At last, Jun thinks it's over, he's finally got Alma, and now he can fix his broken body. But just as he begins to celebrate, Alma shockingly still moves and knocks him flat. Jun's completely baffled. Mecha Yude aren't supposed to move on their own. His confusion only deepens when Hikaru, who should be on the verge of death after having his mecha ripped out, starts moving too. Hikaru reaches out for Alma, and as soon as they touch, Alma's true power is unleashed, sending a clear message to Jun. He's in deep trouble. Jun tries forming a massive fist to knock them out, but it's pointless. Hikaru and Alma are on a different level now, and they crush his attack like it's nothing. Together, they launch a fist at Jun, and just when he thinks he's blocked it, Hikaru rushes in and finishes him off with one final brutal punch. Jun's completely down for the count at this point. Hikaru and Alma finally think they can breathe easy, but nope, they were dead wrong. The head of the White Ravens shows up, and both Hikaru and Alma brace themselves for another fight. But the man waves it off, saying he's not getting paid to brawl with them today. He's just here to take Jun and leave. He also grabs Sinus and Dex, intending to take them too, but Hikaru steps in, declaring he's not letting the guy walk off with them. The White Ravens leader looks like he's more than ready to throw down, but Jun, still licking his wounds, stops him, saying he wants to be the one to defeat Hikaru someday. He forbids the man from harming Hikaru for now. The man, with a shrug, tosses the Mecha Yude back to Hikaru, but not that a parting warning. They'll meet again, and next time, Hikaru won't be so lucky. A little while later, Aki wakes up in a hospital with Sinus and Dex reattached to her. After learning that Hikaru was the one who saved her, she heads up to the rooftop, where Hikaru is awkwardly trying to sew Alma back onto his jacket. She sits down next to him, and there's an uncomfortable silence. Eventually, Hikaru breaks the ice and asks her what she was really searching for the night before. Aki admits she was hunting for the person who killed her family. The only clue she has is that the killer wields a worm-type Mecha Yude. Turns out, Jun wasn't the one. She acted impulsively because of her need for revenge, and she's grateful Hikaru saved her from herself. Wanting to repay him, she offers to sew Alma back together for him. Problem is, Aki's terrible at sewing, and Hikaru quickly tries to stop her before she makes things worse. Just as they're struggling over the needle and thread, Meru walks in with some sweets, and seeing the two of them so close, Meru is instantly struck by what looks like a romance scene, her eyes widening in shock. She squeals, declaring the rom-com love has hit a new level, then runs off screaming that she loves it. Hikaru fumbles to explain, but before he can get a word out, Aki, completely unfazed, dives into the sweets like a maniac, happily munching away. Hikaru is now officially part of ARMS, and just a few days later, he's thrown into his first mission for the team. A couple of other ARMS members are on standby, while Hikaru clings to the top of a transport truck carrying captured Mecha Yude. When he peeks inside, he sees a nasty-looking fat guy beating up a scientist. The team had expected this, so they remind Hikaru to stick to the plan. Set off the EMP they gave him once the truck reaches the interchange up ahead. Hikaru plans to follow orders, but when Alma sees the fat man abusing his shackled Mecha Yude, he refuses to just stand by. So he does something reckless that causes the truck to flip over, creating a huge accident on the road. Hikaru gets out unharmed, but now he has to run for his life because Alma's outburst gave away their position, making Hikaru a target. Unfortunately, the fat man throws the entire truck in front of him, blocking his escape. Things are looking grim, so ARMS member Tiny and his Mecha Carex decide to lend a hand. The man then fires multiple missiles at Hikaru, who barely dodges them, but now 3 mechas are closing in. The fat guy then pulls out an armed cannon, aiming to turn Hikaru to ashes. But just as it seems like Hikaru is done for, Tani zooms in and snatches him to safety. Hikaru is grateful for the rescue, and Alma apologizes for causing such a mess with his impulsive actions. But they barely have time to talk before the fat man locates them again and charges in for another attack. This time though, Aki intercepts him and knocks him to the ground. She's beyond annoyed that Hikaru and Alma bumbled such a simple task, so she orders Tani to get them out before they make things worse for the mission. When the fat man gets back up, he notices Aki has 2 mechas, but he still thinks he's got the upper hand because he's packing 3. He tries to kick her, but she easily blocks it. Then he attempts to blast her, but the fool runs out of energy and passes out. Turns out, using a mecha Yude takes serious stamina, and this guy clearly hasn't trained enough to handle more than one. Not surprising considering he's probably never set foot in a gym in his life. Aki then figures he won't be getting up anytime soon, so she calls in a recovery team to come pick him up. But while her back is turned, someone else sneaks in using a worm-type mecha to revive the guy. By the time Aki realizes something's wrong, the fat man's already back on his feet, stronger than before. Aki is struggling to handle the guy's strength, and her chances of winning look pretty slim. But just in the nick of time, Hikaru comes charging in and knocks the guy back. Aki yells that she told him to run, but of course, Hikaru couldn't just sit by and watch her struggle, so he jumped in to help. The man then gets back up and fires his laser cannon, but Hikaru and Alma see it coming a mile away, and together, they easily deflect the blast. Then the guy tries to crush them with the truck, but Hikaru, totally unfazed, charges forward and knocks him out with a single punch. When the fight's over, Tani comes up and congratulates Hikaru for doing such a solid job. Thanks to his efforts, they were able to rescue a ton of Mecha Yude, and Hikaru basks in the praise. But Aki seems more interested in the knocked out guy. Back at headquarters, Aki is in the shower, lost in flashbacks of her time with her sister and the promise she made to protect her. A promise she ultimately failed to keep, and now all she has left is the drive to avenge her family. Outside the shower, a nervous scientist Aki had asked for help is waiting for her. When she finally steps out, he starts freaking out because it's the first time he's seen her right out of the shower. He quickly explains that he's just here to report on the issue Aki asked him to look into, but unfortunately they didn't get any useful info from the guy they captured. They inspected the mecha Yude he was using, and none were worm types. But Aki's sure she saw a worm type, so something weird is definitely going on. The scientist, trying to be supportive, tells Aki he knows she's out for revenge and promises to help her investigate with everything he's got. He even tries to convince her to rely on him instead of Hikaru. But by the time he finishes his little speech, Aki's already gone to find Hikaru. Over at Hikaru's house, Alma wakes up and realizes they overslept, and if Hikaru doesn't get up soon, they're going to be late for school, so Alma panics and starts trying to drag Hikaru out of bed by his pants, even offering to help him change clothes if that's what it takes. But just as Alma's making a mess of things, Aki bursts into Hikaru's room through the window. Seeing that he's not ready for school, she also says she'll help him get dressed, whether he likes it or not, because her offer is non-negotiable. Meanwhile at school, the whole class is buzzing because there's a rumor that a new transfer student is joining today, and apparently the guy's filthy rich, so naturally everyone wants to meet him. Right then, the door swings open, and there's Aki holding a half-naked Hikaru. Everyone immediately assumes there's something going on between the two, and Meru's mind starts running wild with all sorts of fantasies. Then once Aki sets Hikaru down, Meru casually informs the class that the new transfer student will be arriving soon. This is news to Aki as well, but just as she's processing it, a call blares over the PA system and some guy is yelling for Hikaru to come to the roof. So Hikaru and Aki head up there, only to find Jun waiting for them. The second Sinus and Dex lay eyes on him. They immediately attack, remembering what Jun did to Aki the last time they crossed paths. But Jun blocks the attack with his mecha, already annoyed by the interruption. He's about to take her down when he gets a message from Tudo, the head of the White Ravens. Tudo isn't having any of it and reminds Jun that the only reason he's allowed at school is because he promised not to use his mecha, but here he is already breaking that promise. Jun tries to argue that Aki started it, but Tudo shuts him down because there are no exceptions. Left with no choice, Jun withdraws his mecha and surrenders. Aki is more than ready to knock him out cold anyway, but Hikaru tells her to back off since it's clear Jun doesn't want to fight anymore, so Aki reluctantly lets him go for now. Jun, however, swears he'll claim the trigger arm for himself eventually, but that's a mission for another day because the real reason he came to this school is Hikaru. He then says that the scientist who created his mecha told him it would take time for it to fully adapt to his body, so until he can master it, he plans to keep a close eye on Hikaru. He wants to figure out the secret behind how Hikaru can use Alma so effortlessly, and once he learns that secret, Jun vows to crush Hikaru and steal the trigger arm. Hikaru then notices that Jun keeps calling Alma the trigger arm, so he asks if Jun knows any other useful info since Alma lost his memories. But before Jun can even answer, Aki goes for the attack again, convinced that Jun is way too dangerous to let live. She's dead serious about finishing him off, but Alma grabs her just in time, reminding her they need to get some information about Alma's past from Jun. But while they're busy fighting, Jun casually starts walking away. Before leaving, he shoots Hikaru a warning. His mecha restrictions only apply at school, so if he catches Hikaru slipping on the streets, he's not going to let him off so easy. Later that day, Aki and Hikaru are walking through the school halls together, and Aki's sticking way too close for comfort. Hikaru is starting to get seriously annoyed, so he tries to distract her by pretending there's an imaginary rice ball just to create some space. It works for a minute, but no matter where he goes, Aki's right there practically glued to his side. Then Hikaru desperately manages to ditch her by using his actual lunch as bait, but now he's left hungry and wondering what to do. But just as he's contemplating his next move, he hears Jun's voice from above. Jun then recalls asking Tudu if he knows what makes Hikaru able to use the trigger arm without any training, and Tudu had no clue, but he then jokingly says that maybe it's something in the food Hikaru eats. So now waving his black card like he owns the place, Jun says he's treating Hikaru to lunch so he can see what he's eating. Hikaru finds the offer weird, but since he wanted to talk to Jun anyway, he asks if Jun knows anything about Alma's past. But before Jun can answer, Aki kicks Hikaru's legs and she holds him, refusing to let Jun get too close to Hikaru. But then she says that she has no issue accepting Jun's offer for a free lunch and she's already picked out the dream meal she wants. A little while later, Hikaru finds himself hiding out in the bathroom, desperate for some alone time. He tells Alma he's at a loss because Aki won't let him get anywhere near Jun, and it's clear Jun knows something about Alma's past. But Aki doesn't seem to care, and if things keep going like this, Hikaru may never get the chance to ask Jun what he knows. Just then, an idea strikes Hikaru, and he might have a way to finally get close to Jun after all. Today is the big sports tournament, and Hikaru thinks that this might finally be his chance to talk to Jun, but when the moment arrives, Jun is nowhere to be seen. Just then, Hikaru gets smacked right in the face with a ball. Turns out, Jun has been watching from a tree the entire time, and he can't believe Hikaru's reaction time is so slow, even though he's got the strongest mecha. Suddenly, Jun senses something flying his way, so he dodges, and another ball bounces off the tree, ricocheting right onto Hikaru's head, knocking him out cold. The ball was thrown by Aki, but she had meant to hit Jun, so she apologizes to Hikaru for accidentally taking him out. While Hikaru is unconscious, Meru sees her chance to act out one of her wild fantasies. She ties Hikaru up in a ribbon and stages a showdown between Aki and Jun to see who gets to win Hikaru. Aki's down for it, still holding a grudge against Jun for what he did to her and Jun. Well, he's always game for a fight, but since Meru's pulling the strings, they agree to settle things with a plain old fistfight. Then we see that Meru is loving every second of the drama, while Alma pleads with Hikaru to find a way to stop Aki, reminding him they still need to talk to Jun. Thinking fast, Hikaru comes up with the only thing that might work, and it's food. He then stands up and yells that if Aki gives him a few minutes alone with Jun, he'll buy her dream meal. Aki gets tempted by the thought of free food, so she agrees and drags Meru off, leaving Jun and Hikaru some privacy. Once they're alone, Jun asks what Hikaru wanted to talk about. Hikaru and Alma waste no time asking if Jun knows anything about Alma's past, since the Kagami group seems so intent on capturing him. Alma then explains that he lost all his memories, so any info Jun has would be super helpful. Jun, shocked that the mighty trigger arm has amnesia, tells them that the Kagami group has tons of records on Alma. After all, Alma originally belonged to them. Jun even pulls out a photo as proof. It shows Alma with Yakumo Kagami, the founder of the Kagami group and the one who built this city into what it is today. Hikaru and Alma are stunned, but Jun admits he doesn't know much beyond that, since the photo was taken decades ago. As Jun leaves, Aki watches from a bridge with Meru tied up next to her. Then Aki gets a call from the scientist she spoke to earlier, and he's found a lead on the worm-type Mecha-Yude user she's been hunting for. A little while later, Hikaru and Alma head to the city library to dig up some info on Yakumo Kagami. Alma can't wrap his head around why everyone here seems to love the Kagami group so much, considering the awful things they've been doing to Mecha-Yude. Hikaru agrees their recent actions have been pretty disgusting, but from the people's point of view, the Kagami group has done a lot to improve the city, so it makes sense they'd be adored. As they search, Hikaru and Alma stumble across a portrait of Yakumo Kagami, and that's when Alma loses it. He breaks down in tears because he knows this person was important to him, but he can't remember a thing about them. Meanwhile, across the city, Tammy has just been captured by the worm-type mecha user, and Aki is the first to arrive at the scene. But before she can do anything, the mecha has already ripped Carex right out of Tanny's body. It then hurls Tanny at Aki like a ragdoll, and as for Carex, it crushes him until he shatters into pieces. Aki, Sinus, and Dex are enraged and they all attack the worm user, but it dodges their strikes and gets far enough away to launch something into the gaping hole in Tanny's chest, turning him into a puppet under its control, forcing him to fight Aki. As the worm user tries to make its escape, Aki faces a tough choice: check on Tanny or chase down the worm user. She's desperate to capture the worm user, so she knocks Tanny out and tears off the worm control device. Hikaru then gets a call about Tanny's condition and rushes over, finding him unconscious in an alleyway. They get Tani back to headquarters, and thanks to Hikaru's quick actions, Tani should survive. But as for Carex, there's no saving him. Mecha Yude might be mechanical life forms, but they die just like humans do, and nothing can change that. Originally, they came from another dimension in search of Ordella, the father of all Mecha Yude. With the help of some humans, they managed to find it. But during an experiment to awaken it, something went horribly wrong, so Alma had to use all this power to seal Ordella away, and that's likely what caused his memory loss. The key to Ordella's location lies within Alma's lost memories, and depending on who gets their hands on it, the fate of the world could be at stake. Elsewhere, Aki finally catches up with the Red Girl, demanding to know if she was the one who killed her family and attempts to attack. But when the Red Girl turns around, Aki is stunned because she notices a toy in her hand, and it belongs to her little sister. We then flash back to just before Aki meets her sister. When Aki meets up with Quen, he tells her that the worm-type user she's hunting is still on the loose. He only discovered this because the incident reports showed someone other than Jun was stripping people of their mecha. This had been going on for months, so Aki became furious and grabs him by the collar, demanding why he didn't tell her sooner. Quen tries to defend himself by saying that he didn't know either until now, and the only reason he even found out was by hacking into the ARMS database to help Aki. She then lets him go, but the fact that this info has been in ARMS' database for months means one thing. Algis knew the whole time and decided not to tell her. Quen speculates that Algis was likely investigating these incidents himself, tracking them for 8 years now. Just then, an alarm blares, so that means that the worm-type user is active again. Aki doesn't hesitate and charges out, ready to confront her archenemy. The story then shifts back to the present, where Aki confronts the worm-type user, who turns out to be her supposedly dead sister Fubuki. Aki gets shocked and flashes back to their childhood, recalling when she and Fubuki would play games with Sinus and Dex, but even then, Aki never quite understood the point of this game. Then just as they were playing, her mother called Fubuki from the room because it was her turn for the experiments. Normally Aki would go, but her leg was injured, so Fubuki had to take her place. Fubuki left with a smile, but it was the last time Aki saw her because moments later the facility exploded in flames and neither Fubuki nor their parents were ever seen again, that is until now. We're back in the present with Aki, Sinus, and Dex stunned that Fubuki is alive, and also Fubuki is just as overjoyed to see Aki, yet her frail coughing shows she's in terrible shape. Fubuki's mecha then emerges, but before she can even fart, Sinus and Dex grab it and slam it into the wall. They have so many unanswered questions, but right now they have to escape because ARMS is on its way. And then we see that by the time the ARMS agents reach the garage, they find nothing but a crack in the wall and one of Aki's broken hair clips, so Algis knows she was there. Outside the garage, Aki still has the worm mecha held hostage, determined to get answers. She demands to know if it was responsible for killing her parents. The mecha tries to explain, saying it was all an accident, but Sinus and Dex won't let it finish because they're convinced that any word that will come out of that screwdriver will be just bullshit. Sinus was there with Fubuki on the day of the incident and clearly remembers the worm mecha attacking everyone, but the only thing he doesn't know is why it did. Fubuki then begs Aki to stop, insisting that their parents' deaths weren't Amaryllis' fault. Fubuki blames herself for what happened and apologizes over and over to Aki, while Amaryllis tries to comfort her. It's clear now there's more to this story than any of them realize, so Sinus and Dex demand Amaryllis tell them exactly what happened that day. On the day of the incident, everything was going as planned. Fubuki had been happily telling her mom about the game she played with Aki, and the experiment was meant to explore the possibility of Arbitrium amplification. Amaryllis, along with the woman who was united with her at the time, entered to assist, but the instant Amaryllis locked eyes with Fubuki, an unknown phenomenon struck, causing both of their Arbitrium to resonate wildly. Amaryllis tried to stop it by de-resonating with Fubuki, but it only made things worse. Back in the present, Fubuki admits she's wanted to talk to Aki about this for years, but she could never gather the courage, feeling that her parents' deaths were her fault. Amaryllis reassures her it wasn't her fault, but despite Amaryllis' insistence that it was an accident, Aki still blames her, so she ignores Fubuki's pleas and intends to destroy Amaryllis here and now. But under all the stress, Fubuki faints just as Amaryllis had feared might happen. Aki thinks they should get Fubuki to a hospital, but Amaryllis tells her it's useless because after the incident, Fubuki was left with a condition that prevents her from generating her own Arbitrium, and no doctor or scientist has been able to help. They've managed her symptoms so far, but at this rate, Fubuki won't last much longer. And according to Amaryllis, there's only one way to save Fubuki, but it's going to be incredibly difficult. The next morning, as Hikaru's alarm blares, Alma wakes him, since this is the usual time Aki comes crashing through his window. But today, the window remains untouched, and instead, Aki rings the front doorbell. Hikaru and Alma exchange a look. Aki never uses the front door, so it's clear something's off, but she doesn't seem ready to talk about it, so Hikaru holds back from asking. Just then, Meru bursts in, eager to ask them something. With a big test coming up, she suggests they all have a group study session, including Jun, who's been lurking nearby spying on Hikaru all morning. Meru heads over and asks if he'd like to join, but Jun scoffs and claims that he didn't come to this school for something as pointless as studying. Meru just ignores this shit talk like it never comes out of his mouth and shouts back to Hikaru, asking if they can hold the study session at his house. Hikaru mulls it over and sure he'd like to hang out with Meru, but he knows Aki and Jun will probably clash, and the last thing he needs is a showdown in his house. He tries talking Meru out of it, but she won't budge, even asking Aki to back her up. Aki declines politely, but Meru keeps pushing, saying it's the perfect excuse to visit Hikaru's house. But Aki says that she has been going to his house every morning, so the idea doesn't excite her, and this just makes Meru start daydreaming again about how far their rom-com has progressed. Aki then walks off, and Hikaru follows, sensing something's bothering her, though she refuses to say what. Meanwhile, back at ARMS, one of the scientists, frustrated with being out of the loop, heads over to Quentin's workstation, asking if he knows anything about Aki's whereabouts, as she hasn't been to headquarters lately. Quentin initially plays dumb, but after he gets to test some unique persuasion, he confesses he might have something to do with Aki's current situation. Meanwhile, Aki sits beside her ailing sister as Amaryllis explains how they'd managed to keep Fubuki alive so far. Since Fubuki can generate her own Arbitrium, Amaryllis has been siphoning Arbitrium from other mecha users to feed it to her. But Fubuki's illness is advancing too quickly now for Amaryllis to keep up, and with little time left before her condition turns critical, Amaryllis urges Aki to do whatever it takes to save her sister. And of course, the only way Aki can guarantee Fubuki's survival is by taking Hikaru's poor life. Then we see that at the same time across the city, all the mecha users that Amaryllis infected, both from ARMS and the Kagami group, begin lashing out in violent fits without warning like zombies. Algis seems to have an idea of what might be behind it, so he orders all available ARMS agents into the field to restrain the rogue mecha users, while Kagami gives the same directive to their group. Later that evening, Meru, Jun, and Hikaru are heading to his place to study, but as they're walking, Hikaru gets an urgent message from Algis, so he quickly cancels on them and runs off in the opposite direction. Soon after, he arrives at ARMS headquarters, where Algis apologizes for calling him in on such short notice, but explains there's a crisis. Dozens of mecha users have suddenly spiraled out of control, and Algis suspects the worm-type mecha user is responsible. He even has footage of Aki making friendly contact with this worm user, which raises suspicions that Aki might somehow be involved. So if Algis is right, that would mean she's betrayed both humanity and the mecha kind. For now, he plans to capture her for questioning, but given her strength, they may have to use force to bring her down. Alma and Hikaru can hardly believe Algis suspects Aki because she's one of their own. But Algis points out that the organization can't run on feelings alone, and also the only reason Aki joined ARMS was because her goals aligned with theirs, so if her goals have changed, there's nothing to keep her from betraying them. Hikaru refuses to believe Aki would ever turn against them, so he races off to find her before ARMS does, hoping to figure out what's really going on. That's the plan at least, but on his way he runs into Quen, who reminds him that he has no clue where to start looking. But luckily, Quen has thought it through and has come up with a foolproof plan to track Aki down, and it involves this idiot. Hikaru immediately recognizes this goofy as Warner, the guy who tried to kill him a few days ago. It's clear Warner doesn't want to be here, but he doesn't have much of a choice. And before they can even discuss their plan, Warner's mecha emerges and starts profusely apologizing for Warner's actions. Hikaru is confused because he thought Warner's mecha was supposed to be brainwashed. But after Warner's capture, ARMS managed to remove the shackles and free Kagemaru. Quentin was reluctant to let Kagemaru relink with Warner, but with no other options, and since Kagemaru insisted, he allowed it. Kagemaru then declares he's going to teach Warner what it truly means to fight for justice, and that Warner's going to learn even if he has to beat it into his skull. Forcing Warner down onto his knees, Kagemaru makes him apologize, with Warner swearing at Hikaru and Alma that the two of them will be valuable on this mission. Out in town a while later, Kagemaru is scanning every inch for Aki, but Warner keeps whining about wanting to go home, which gets on Kagemaru's last nerve, so he snaps at him to work harder if he's serious about atoning for his past mistakes. Hikaru and Alma are starting to doubt if this is even the best way to find Aki, but Kagemaru reassures them, saying it's only a matter of time before they'll track her down soon, thanks to the acoustic sonar that's picking up the resonant frequency of her Arbitrium. Just then, Hikaru is ambushed from behind, but Kagemaru shields him out of danger just in time. The attacker turns out to be Jun, who's clearly sick of Hikaru avoiding him. He declares he won't leave Hikaru alone until he figures out the secret behind Hikaru's powers. With Jun likely tagging along now, Alma asks if he's down to help them search for Aki. But since Jun has never been a fan of Aki, he scoffs, questioning why he want to help. So Alma, determined to get his help, promises to spill some of Hikaru's secrets at the study session if Jun agrees. Jun takes the bait, and word of this gets back to Tudo, who informs Jun's brother, asking if he should send someone to keep an eye on Jun, but Jun's brother doesn't give a damn about Jun's safety, insisting that the company's priorities come first, so he won't be sending anyone to babysit him. Meanwhile, Kajimaru has tracked Aki's Arbitrium to a parking garage. The signal is strong, so he's convinced she must be close. But when they reach the source, they're faced with Aki herself, who looks dead set on following Amaryllis' advice if it means saving her sister. Elsewhere, Fubuki becomes suddenly energized, eagerly asking Amaryllis if her sister will be alright. Amaryllis assures her, telling her not to worry because Aki loves her. So Fubuki, with a smile, shakes her head and says that Aki better save her this time. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.